The Psychology of Money, Lesson 20 Confessions, The Psychology of My Own Money. Sandy Gutspan, a billionaire investor who founded the consulting group First Manhattan, is said to ask one question when interviewing candidates for his investment team: what to do you own and why? Not what stocks do you think are cheap or what economy is about to have a recession. Just show me what you do with your own money. I love this question because it highlights what can often be a mile wide gap between what makes sense, which is that people suggest you do, and what feels right to them, which is what they actually do. Half of all US mutual fund portfolio managers do not invest a cent of their own money in their funds. According to Morningstar, this might seem atrocious, and surely the statistics uncover some hypocrisy. But this kind of stuff is more common than you would think. Ken Murray, a professor of medicine at USC, wrote an essay in 2011 titled How Doctors Die that showed the degree to which doctors choose different end of life treatment for themselves than they recommend for their patients. Don't die like the rest of us, he wrote. What is unusual about them is not how much treatment they get compared to most Americans, but how little. All the time they spend fending off the deaths of others, they tend to feel fairly serene when faced with death themselves. They know exactly what is going to happen. They know the choices and they generally have access to any sort of medical care they could want. But they go gently. A doctor may throw the kitchen sink at her patient's cancer but choose palliative care for herself. The difference between what someone suggests you do and what they do for themselves is not always a bad thing. It just underscores that when dealing with complicated and emotional issues that affect you and your family, there is no one right answer, there is no universal truth. There is only what works for you and your family, checking the boxes you want checked in a way that leaves you comfortable and sleeping well at night. There are basic principles that must be adhered to. This is true in finance and in medicine. But important financial decisions are not made in a spreadsheet or in a textbooks. They are made at the dinner table. They often are not made with the intention of maximizing returns, but minimizing the chance of disappointing a spouse or child. Those kind of things are difficult to summarize in charts for formulas, and they are very widely from person to person. What works for one person may not work for another. You have to find what works for you. Here is what works for me. How my family thinks about saving. Charlie Munger once said, I did not intend to get rich, I just wanted to get independent. We can live inside rich, but independence has always been my personal financial goal. Chasing the highest return or leveraging my assets to live the most luxurious life has little interest to me. Both look like games people do to impress their friends, and both have hidden risk. I mostly just want to wake up every day knowing my family and I can do whatever we want to do on our own terms. Every financial decision we make resolves around that goal. My parents lived their adult years in two stages: dirt poor and moderately well off. My father became a doctor when he was 40 and already had three kids. Earning a doctor's salary did not offset the frugal mentality that is forced when supporting three hungry kids while in medical school, and my parents spent the good years living well below their means with a high saving rates. This gave them a degree of independence. My father was an emergency room doctor, one of the highest stress profession I can imagine, and one that requires a painful toggling in circadian rhythms between nights and day shifts. After 2 decades, he decided he would have enough. So he stopped, just quit, moved on to the next phase of his life. That stuck with me. Being able to wake up one morning and change what you are doing on your own terms whenever you are ready seems like the grandmother of all financial goals. Independence to me does not mean you will stop working. It means you only do the work you like with people you like at the times you want for as long as you want. And achieving some level of independence does not rely on earning a doctor's income. It's mostly a matter of keeping your expectation in check and living below your means. Independence at any income level is driven by your savings rate, and past a certain level of income, your savings rate is driven by your ability to keep your lifestyle expectations from running away. My wife and I met in college and moved in with each other years before we got married. After school, we both had entry level jobs with entry level pay and settled into a moderate lifestyle. Our lifestyle exists on a spectrum, and what is decent to one person can feel like royalty or poverty to another. But at our incomes, we got what we consider a decent apartment, a decent car, decent clothes, decent foods, comfortable, but not nothing close to fancy. Despite more a decade of rising incomes, myself in finance, my wife in healthcare, we have more or less stayed at that lifestyle ever since. That is pushed our savings rate continuously higher. Virtually every dollar of raise has accrued to savings, our independence fund. We now live considerably below our means, which tells you little about your income and more about our decision to maintain a lifestyle that we established in our 20s. If there is a part of our household financial plan I am proud of, it is what we got the goal post of lifestyle desire to stop moving at a young age. Our savings rate is fairly enough, but we rarely feel like we are repressive, frugal, because our aspirations for more stuff have not moved much. It is not that our aspirations are not existence. We like nice stuff and comfortably. We just got the goalpost to stop moving. This would not work for everyone, and it only works for us because we both agree to it equally. Neither of us are compromising for the other. Most of what we get pleasure from going for walks, readings, podcasts, cost little. So we rarely feel like we are missing out. On the rare occasion when I question our savings rate, I think of the independence my parents earned from years of high savings, and I quickly come back. Independence is our top goal. A secondary benefit of maintaining a lifestyle below what you can afford is avoiding the psychological treadmill of keeping up with the Jones. Comfortably living below what you can afford without much desire for more removes the tremendous amount of social pressure that many people in the modern first world subject themselves to. Nassim Taleb explained true success is existing some rat race to modulate one's activities for peace of mind. I like that. We are so far committed to the independence camp that we have done things that makes little sense on paper. We own our house without a mortgage, which is the worst financial decision we have ever made, but the best money decision we have ever made. Mortgage interest rates were absurdly low when we bought our house. Any rational advisor would recommend taking advantage of cheap money and investing extra savings in higher return assets like stocks. But our goal is not coldly rational, just psychologically reasonable. The independence feeling I get from owning our house outright far exceeds the known financial gain I would get from leveraging our assets with a cheap mortgage. Eliminating the monthly payment feels better than maximizing the long term value of our assets. It makes me feel independent. I don't try to defend this decision to those pointing out its flaws or those who would never do the same. On paper, it is defenseless, but it works for us. We like it. That is what matters. Good decisions are not always rational. At some point, you have to choose between being happy or being right. So, keep a higher percentage of our assets in cash than most financial advisors would recommend. something around 20% of our assets. Outside the value of our house, this is also close to indefensible on papers. I am not recommending to others. It is just what works for us. We do it because cash is the oxygen of independence, and more importantly, we never want to be forced to sell the stocks we own. We want the probability of facing a huge expense and needing to liquidate stocks to cover it to be as close to zero as possible. Perhaps we just have a lower risk tolerance than others. But everything I have learned about personal finance tell us that everyone without exception will eventually face a huge expense they did not expect, and they don't plan for these expenses because they did not expect them. The few people who know the details of our finance ask, what are you saving for? A house, a boat, a new car? No, none of those. I'm saving for a world where curveballs are more common than we expect. Not being forced to sell stocks to cover an expense also means we are increasing the odds of letting the stocks we own compound for the longest period of time. Charlie Munger put it well. The first rule of compounding is to never interrupt it unnecessarily. How my pupil thinks about investing. I started my career as a stock picker. At the time, we only owned individual stocks, mostly large companies like Berkshire Hathaway and Procter and Gamble, mixed with smaller stocks I consider deep value investments. Go back to my 20s, and at any given point, I held something like 25 individual stocks. I don't know how I did as a stock picker. Did I beat the market? I'm not sure. Like most who try, I did not keep a good score either way. I have shifted my views, and now every stock we own is a low cost index fund. I don't have anything against actively picking stocks either on your own or through giving your money to an active fund manager. I think some people can outperform the market averages. It is just very hard and harder than most people think. If I had to summarize my views on investing, it is this: every investor should pick a strategy that has the highest odds of the successfully meeting their goals. And I think for most investors, dollar cost averaging into a low cost index fund will provide the highest odds of long term success. That does not mean index investing will always work. It does not mean it's for everyone, and it does not mean active stock picking is doomed to fail. In general, this industry has become too entrenched on one side or other, particularly those vehemently against active investing. Beating the market should be hard. The odds of success should be low. If they were not, everyone would do it, and if everyone did it, there would be no opportunity. So, no one should be surprised that the majority of those trying to beat the market fail to do so. The statistics show 85% of large cap active managers did not beat the S&P 500 over the decades ending 2019. I know people who think it is insane to try to beat the market but encourage their kids to reach for the stars and try to become professional athletes. To each their own. Life is about playing the odds, and we all think about odds a little differently. Over the years, I came around to do view that we will have a high chance of meeting all of our family's financial goals if we consistently invest money into a low cost index funds for decades on end, leaving the money alone to compound. A lot of this view comes from our lifestyle of frugal spending. If you can meet all your goals without having to take the added risk that comes from trying to outperform the market, then what's the point of even trying? I can afford to not to be the greatest investor in the world, but I can't afford to be a bad one. When I think of it that way, the choice to buy the index and hold on is no brainer for us. I know not everyone will agree, with that logic, especially my friend whose job it is to beat the market. I respect that they do. But this is what works for us. We invest money from every paycheck into these index funds, a combination of US and international stocks. There is no set goal. It is just whatever is left over after we spend. We max our retirement accounts in the same funds and contribute to our kids' 529 colleges saving plans. And that is about it. Effectively, all of our net worth is a house, a checking account, and some Vanguard index fund. It does not need to be more complicated than that for us. I like it simple. One of my deeply held investing belief is that there is little correlation between investment effort and investment results. The reason is because the world is driven by trails. A few variables account for the majority of returns. No matter how hard you try to investing, you want to do well if you miss the two or three things that moves the needle in your strategy. The reverse is true. Simple investment strategy can work great as long as they capture the few things that are important to what strategy is success. My investing strategy does not rely on picking the right sector or timing the next recession. It relies on a high savings rate, patience, and optimism that the global economy will create value over the next several decades. I spend virtually all of my investing effort thinking about those three things, especially the first two, which I can control. I have changed my investment strategy in the past, so of course, there is a chance I will change it in the future. No matter how we save or invest, I am sure we will always have the goal of independence, and we will always do whatever maximizes for sleeping well at night. We think it is the ultimate goal, the mastery of the psychology of money, but to each their own, no one is crazy.